From the Newcastle perspective, what happened?
We didn't track Kevin De Bruyne for a start. We had 2 academy lads in centre midfield. One of them is 17 years old. One of them is Sean Longstaff. And I'll be honest, Sean Longstaff is an absolute fucking passenger in this side. And not just against Man City, though. People are like, oh, it's Man City. No, against Sunderland. We played at Sunderland a week before, and I'm watching him. And I'm thinking, you're fucking shying away here. Do you know when the defence get the ball and they're looking and they're going like that? And you see one of the midfielders and he just shrinks.
That's quite damning on Sean Longstaff's behalf that you say that, isn't it? In that game, Sunderland, you're the academy graduate. You're a Geordie. You've come through the academy sort of thing. So
and think about me. No one wants to support Geordies more than me. Now, when I'm watching you shrink at the Stadium of Light, and not for the first time, he has this thing. It reminds me when I was 11 years old and I was trying to get in the school football team, and I'd be all finger pointing and shouting, but really achieving fuck all. Do you know what I mean? And he's got this very clever ability to jog as if he's really, but he's never close enough to impact anyone. He's never close enough to make the tackle. And then when he does get on the end of crosses coming in, they're always shit shots. And there's been a few months where I've kept my eye on this guy and I thought, I don't want to say it, but now it's happening. Like, I'm calling him out now. He's an absolute fraud, and he's the first one who should be out the door as far as I'm concerned, because to do it against Sunderland like that, and you see, a lot of the fans have seen this. I've seen it all over Twitter. Like, he's a passenger. He's a waste of a shirt. And in that game, I knew, as much as the brilliance of Kevin De Bruyne was absolutely there on show, the positional sense of Newcastle's midfield was pathetic. Now, I can excuse a 17-year-old lad for it, especially when he's 10 times as good with the ball as Sean Longstaff is. But what I can't do is excuse Sean Longstaff, who should be by now a Premier League guy. And even Bruno Guimaraes, who, despite having Hollywood moments, his positional sense, and this is partly a Newcastle problem, is when we've got so many players up. But even if we had a lot of these midfielders back, we haven't got a holding midfielder in the whole fucking squad. I have to give credit to City. They were fucking fantastic. Like, I think that was one of the best games of the season, to be fair to them, to both sides.
That was a statement win as well. That in terms of timing, I think we're into the sort of business end of the season now, where results start to matter, right? And it's teams are playing each other for the second time, and you think, from an Arsenal perspective, and looking at what Liverpool have been doing as well, City missed games in December. They went off and did the Club World Championship, and it's like they've come back now. De Bruyne's back, Haaland's back in a couple of weeks, and it's like it's almost like they're looking around at the other teams and going, "Is this all you've done?" While we've been away.
I think that's a great point.
None of you built up a lead. No, while we had De Bruyne out for half a season, none of you built up a lead.
And
none of you ran away.
All right, injured.
Here we come now. And for me, I think we're going to look back. I think in a couple of weeks, a couple of months' time, I think we're going to look back at that result, and especially at half time when you guys were 2-1 up, and I think we're going to look back and go, that's where they turned it.
However, I think it's easy to get carried away with that win without recognising how often Newcastle have capitulated in the dying minutes, and that this isn't just a thing that happened because City was so great. This has been happening against Liverpool again. So I think that was the perfect game and the perfect moment for them, and with a midfield that is just in no way equipped to deal with the Kevin De Bruyne. It was set up to make that look great for them. In terms of Kevin De Bruyne, you've been waiting for him to come back. You've been telling us, and that train is right on time.
It really is. It's at the platform, it's arrived. I mean, even I couldn't see this come. I knew he would be imperative to the second half of the season. I think we all did. But for him to come back in his first, we know he played midweek, but his first proper Premier League game and have the impact he had was just incredible to see it. And the thing is, you could see he wasn't even at 100%. The way he was running, he looked a bit sluggish, but still the way he just glided through, past the ball into the bottom corner of the net, and then to set up the last one for Bob, which, by the way, we were saying this off camera, everyone's talking about Kevin De Bruyne, and rightly so, but this Bob kid, where does he come from? Like, they've just produced another kid who, in the dying embers of an important game, like you said, has kept composure, controlled the ball, used great feet to just slot it away, and no one's really talking about him. And I'm like, what? I was super impressed by him. But I think the biggest telling point was Pep's reaction.
Absolutely.
The way, I mean, we've seen him have over-the-top celebrations, but the way he was celebrating at the end of that match, you could see how important that result was to Man City's season.
I literally was like, another manager just rubbing it right in. And it's partly a credit to Newcastle that managers celebrate with the ridiculous nature that they do against us, because we fight to the fucking bitter end. But
and it's St James's Park. Yeah. It's not easy to go there and get a result.
It's the third best home ground in the league in terms of form. But Kevin De Bruyne, we were talking before the stream, where does he rank now in terms of all-time Premier League greats? Because for me, for a long time, he was probably my favourite player in the Premier League while Newcastle were doing fuck all at the bottom, if they were in there. Now I'm looking at it and thinking, who has been more influential in Premier League history in terms of getting their team Premier League titles? Because now I look at it, I really think if Kevin De Bruyne wasn't the player he is, the gap between City and Liverpool would have changed a lot more than it has. Like, he is the difference maker. And even with Haaland, you see the difference he makes to Haaland's game. Like, I think he's up there in the all-time great players, let alone midfielders. Where do you lads rank him, just out of interest?
I'm going to, straight out the gate, this could be controversial, but I'm going to say top 3 all time. Every player that's graced the Premier League, I'm saying top 3. I don't know quite off the top of my head who are the players I'll put above him. Maybe Henry, which pains me to say as a Spurs fan. Maybe Cristiano Ronaldo. Maybe. But De Bruyne for me, and do you know what it is about him? It's not just the trophies he's won, the influence he's had on Man City. It's the rarefied air he's in today when he comes back, which we see. Like, the way everyone's speaking about him. And like I said, he wasn't even...
Go on. When Eric Cantona came back from that big old ban and everyone was like, it's a wrap, son.
Yeah.
Like, it goes back to that level of influence where, like, the king has returned.
He's literally a living legend playing on the pitch we're seeing now. Yeah. Like, the way everyone talks about him, the way every fan, even the rival fans, Liverpool fans, I saw on Twitter, everyone speaking about how good he is, but everyone was excited to see his return.
Mate, he excites
everyone. Usually you're only excited about your own club's players when they return. You know what I mean? With Kevin De Bruyne, it's like, all right, maybe I don't want City to win, but I want to see De Bruyne play.
And we've seen like players like Luis Suarez have amazing seasons where, like, you know, that season in particular stands out for me as, like, you could argue that's the greatest single season I've ever seen in a Premier League, but it's the consistency. And it isn't, and De Bruyne doesn't rely on athleticism the way a lot of these lads did. Like, you see when certain players' legs go a bit, the game is completely fucked. Like, this guy's had a major injury. And I was genuinely thinking, you know, I'm going to back, you know, maybe Arsenal or Liverpool to try and pick them this season, because how can we expect, it's not unfair on De Bruyne to put all of this on your shoulders and be like, oh, by the way, can you just win us the fucking title? And then he turns up with like Batman just when you need him. But where do you rank him in all time?
Do you know what I will say there, though? It's not just the thing about not relying on the athleticism. I would say it's having the versatility to adapt when your athleticism then goes a little bit. So say, for example, like players like Alan Shearer. Alan Shearer stayed being a great goal scorer throughout his career because once his athleticism went a little bit, he then started to adapt. Now, I'm not saying De Bruyne's has, but obviously with the injury, we'll have to sort of let time tell the story. What I would say is I probably don't rate him in top 3 of all time yet. He could then get into it. Definitely in top 3 midfielders of all time. For me personally, and I'll get accused of massive bias here, I'm being deadly serious. I'd still put Lampard ahead of him for this moment in time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So I think at this moment in time, if I look at it, right, and obviously look, City, De Bruyne now has, I'm thinking, won more Premier League titles than Lampard did. Just about. But if I look at it and I say, right, would Chelsea have won any of them titles without Lampard? I think there's an argument to say we might not have won any of them without Lampard. There is an argument. I'm not saying it's definitive.
You're nodding, John.
I totally agree. I think with the Lampard debate, people don't look at the stats of it. Like 177 goals in the Premier League all time for Frank Lampard is an amazing amount of goals. And he also got over 100 assists. Like, combine his goals and assists together.
Can I add to that? However, when we're talking about this stat as well here, remember Lampard was putting in Premier League appearances when he was at West Ham, when he was coming through in 2001-2002 season at Chelsea, when he was sometimes coming off the bench, not even a first team starter. When De Bruyne came to the Premier League, scrapped the Chelsea thing because he had a couple of matches, a handful of matches for Chelsea. When De Bruyne came, he came off the back of having a really good season at Wolfsburg and pretty much came in as a first team starter. So he was more of the closer to the product that we're seeing now when he started his assault on the Premier League, whereas Lampard and even Gerrard, for that matter, were coming through young players. So obviously that will alter the stats ever so slightly as well. Ever
so slightly. How long did Lampard play at Chelsea for?
It's over 10 years.
No.
Longer than that.
I'm saying it will put it in De Bruyne's favour.
How?
Percentage-wise, it will put it in De Bruyne's
In
favour
terms of less
because
games.
Lampard didn't hit the ground running.
But that's his fault, no?
Lampard came through of a guy that, as a guy in the West Ham team, that fans thought Scotty Cannon was better than. So Lampard didn't hit the ground running, didn't come through as the products that we're seeing now. When Man City bought Kevin De Bruyne, he was pretty much, I'm not saying he hasn't gone to different levels, but he was a first-team starter when he came in. So Lampard and Steven Gerrard were not. Steven Gerrard was being played at right back, and Lampard was a guy that the West Ham fans thought Scotty Cannon, whoever that is.
Ironically, I remember back in the day, Kieran Dyer was rated higher than Gerrard and Lampard in the England scene when they were all coming up together, and obviously those two went on to new levels. Jacob, who do you rate higher, Lampard or Kevin De Bruyne?
I'm sorry, mate. No, it's De Bruyne for me. I think there's a conversation to be had about him being currently the best midfielder in the world. Jude Bellingham is obviously doing freaky stuff at Real Madrid. I think for the last 3 years, when De Bruyne is fit, when he's doing it, he's won everything. And I don't think we're having that conversation with Lampard.
Yeah, was Lampard ever the best midfielder in the world?
I don't think we're having that conversation.
He was nominated. He was nominated in the Ballon d'Or.
No, that's not what I said. I didn't say was he nominated.
2005.
I didn't say was he nominated. I said was he the best in the world?
He was in the Ballon d'Or teams of the year, like consistent.
And he was to 04-05 season, right? When Chelsea went out in the semi-finals to the ghost goal at Liverpool, Lampard was the best player in that Champions League. The best player in that Champions League. Tore it up against Barcelona. Tore it up against Bayern Munich.
We got a bit of recency bias. We got a bit of recency bias. There was real footballers back then.
If Lampard, who let's just have on account here, his best ever season, his numbers were better than De Bruyne's best ever season he's ever had. If that Lampard is playing in today's football era, we're like, oh my God. But at the minute, when we're talking about De Bruyne, we just said Jude Bellingham there, right? Give me the list. Give me the list of players that are actively playing right now that you're putting on a pedestal with Kevin De Bruyne. Whereas when Lampard was doing it, you did have Gerrard there, you had Scholes overseas, you had Vieira, Kaká, players like that, right? So I think that undermines it a little bit. Whereas when we look at Kevin De Bruyne at the moment, who is the player that you put alongside him?
What, today?
Yeah.
See, today I don't know, but over the last 5 years, what I'm saying, the reason I think that sometimes we cannot give Lampard the respect that needs being is because there was such a pool of talent there alongside him that it took the shine off what Lampard was doing so much. I would argue if there was a player putting up Frank Lampard numbers consistently in today's era right now, we're looking at him in the same light as Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah, but
maybe even more impressive.
Numbers are numbers. Like Iniesta didn't produce a lot of numbers. Like numbers are cool and obviously they're important. And Lampard, they were important for Chelsea. There's no denying that. But when we talk about who's a better footballer, I don't think Lampard can chat to Kevin De Bruyne as being a better footballer. Technique,
I think it's
grace. I don't think
but,
it is.
But what I will say is, in less time, obviously, I understand that they're different. Like Lampard for me was always a goal scoring midfielder, so I am quite surprised to see how high his assists were. Lampard had 102 assists. Kevin De Bruyne has just surpassed him with 103s. On the old time is 111 for Cesc Fabregas in the Premier League. So it's certain that De Bruyne will be the all-time assist leader by playing less time than the other guys, but he hasn't scored the goals.
Is it significant less time in the Premier League?
It's not massive. I mean, he joined Man City in 2015, so he has actually been there quite a while.
So coming up to 9 years. That's what I'm saying. How long was Lampard in the Premier League for?
Well, his entire career.
Like 20 years.
Yeah. I think it's really hard with midfielders because they do such different things. As you say, like Lampard was a finisher. And
he was kind of a second striker, right?
Yeah, that's how I always saw him. His third man runs into the box, finish off, and assist as well. For me, De Bruyne, and bear in mind, I've got no horse in this race. I'm a complete neutral, and I probably dislike Man City more than I do that Chelsea team. But like, I look at this Man City team, I think they're probably the best team that's played in the Premier League. Certainly in terms of Guardiola, what he's done with Man City. I think in terms of points totals, in terms of what they've done, I don't like saying that. Arsenal's Invincibles, for me, they achieved something no one else has done. But you look at this Manchester City team, they're probably going to win the title again this season. So what's that, like 5 in 6 seasons they'll have won a title? And for me, it's not that De Bruyne is the goal scorer in that midfield. He is that team.
He's
like, he is that team.
Head and shoulders. That's what I'm saying. In the Chelsea team, Lampard was important. We're not denying that. But there were big leaders and characters in that team around him anyway. You had the John Terrys, you had the Drogbas, you had these players that would take it on their back. Even with all the world-class talent in Man City's team right now, Kevin De Bruyne is clearly the talisman that puts it on his back when he's playing.
The only counter to that, though, is that they've been playing for half the season this season. And yeah, they're not right at the top of the league, but they're very close to the top of the league. And they've still been outperforming teams left, right and centre. They've been right up there. And you could argue, I think you could argue now that Rodri is more important to this Man City team than De Bruyne is.
That's an argument.
Because you take Rodri out, and they've completely capitulated. Yeah. So
that's kind of what I'm saying about midfielders, though. It's why it's so hard to say, is he the best of all? Because there are holding midfielders who, like, you take them out of any of the teams we're talking about. You know, there were players in that Chelsea team. You know, John Obi Mikel for a long time was pretty important.
Let's talk about Vieira for a second. Because if we're going midfielders against midfielders, people that made an impact to their club at that particular time, Vieira made a huge impact into that Arsenal team.
Oh yeah,
arguably was the talisman for that amazing season. So
the one big difference for me of all of this conversation is like the level of dominance of Manchester City versus every other team. 5 titles in 6 seasons, which is, you know, what is it going to be, 6 and 7 or what, you know, whatever the hell we're going to end up with. And it doesn't look like it's slowing down. I think that there's a way that De Bruyne plays football that looks a little bit more attractive to the eye. Sometimes having that little bit of flair as opposed to Frank Lampard, it kind of convinces me like, oh, maybe he was better because he could do these, you know, things that Lampard couldn't in the same way. But like, even though Frank Lampard was like a good old fashioned arrive late in the box midfielder, those stats are absolutely insane.
Can I just say,
this is some people would say, oh, De Bruyne's miles clear. I don't think he's miles clear of that by any means.
From someone that was there week in, week out watching Frank Lampard, there's a lot of the Mandela effect that goes on. And exactly what you just said there, arriving late in the box, Lampard was a good player, man. Like Lampard could do a lot all over the pitch. No, but I think, and I'm not accusing anyone around this table of it, but it is a common thing in like the football world that there's that Mandela effect with Lampard in terms of like, yeah, but goal scorer or whatever. Lampard could put in a tackle. Lampard could spray a ball. Lampard could take over the play. Like he did do everything. What I would like to know is, are we saying then, let's say in a hypothetical world, we were putting Kevin De Bruyne. It's not my opinion, but say we were putting him as number 1. Who's closest to him then?
My opinion, Paul Scholes. In my opinion, Paul Scholes. He was such an irreplaceable asset to that Sir Alex Ferguson team. His vision, his understanding of the game. He was a clutch player.
Do you know what annoys me is even this is going to come back to Scholes, Lampard and Gerrard. Fucking hell.
But I don't think it should. There's a weird thing. And by the way, there's going to be a lot of people watching this screaming at their monitors going, the reason that De Bruyne is in the most dominative team of the Premier League era is because of money. Is because of the money that was spent on this City team. That is the reason.
Well, that is partly true.
And people are going to
spend money.
But people are going to point at players like Steven Gerrard, Salah, who played in teams that weren't quite there. Like you mentioned the Fabregas stats, those assist stats. Do you know who Fabregas was assisting? I'm serious. Adebayor. Like 18 months of Van Persie. Like you got to give Fabregas his flowers. But I think the thing you got to say.
Diego Costa.
Yeah, right. But
he had some good ones. He also had some very bad Chelsea.
Costa wasn't long, was it? It wasn't as long as it.
It was a beautiful period.
Yeah, it was a very small shot. I agree. Fabregas deserves his flowers for sure, as does Mo Salah.
But the money does skew it a little bit. But I do think that when we talk about the Guardiola era at City, I think because of the money, we sometimes forget some unbelievable players. For me, Yaya Toure gets into like Yaya Toure. On his day, is the most dominative midfielder I've ever seen in my life. I have never seen a football player like him who, it doesn't matter what you try and do, you can't stop him. You just can't stop. He'll run through you. He'll score from 40 yards. He'll play passes that you can't stop. On his day, he had absolutely everything. And
when we talk about De Bruyne being the driving force for City, that was Yaya Toure.
Mate.
Yaya Toure, when in the last sort of 10, 12 games of a season, when he wanted to turn it on, he was unplayable.
And you talk about how Lampard came into that Chelsea team. Yaya Toure came into Manchester City as a 6, who'd started his career as a centre-back, who failed a trial at Arsenal as a centre-back, came into that Manchester City midfield under Mancini originally. Their tactic was pretty simple. If we're not winning a game at 70 minutes, put Gareth Barry on into 6, put him at 10 and let him just run through a team.
I have to round this up to a question, lad, because we have to talk about today's game. The question is simple. Is Kevin De Bruyne the greatest Premier League midfielder of all time? I'm going to start with Josh. Yes or no?
No, I don't think he's earned it yet.
Craig.
I'm saying yes.
Jacob.
Yeah. No, but it could happen.
It's not long left though. He's getting on.
What do you think?
Honestly, I'm going to say yes. I just think he's been so influential, and the amount of titles, the amount of important like seasons he's had where he has been the talisman. But like, you know, I'm not taking anything away from the other guys, because I agree. Like Yaya Toure, Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, they're all like so many great ones. But for me, he's just been like, we're looking at one of the most dominant eras of football we've ever witnessed in the Premier League, to a point of like, it's a problem. Like it's not great for the league, in my opinion, in the long term. And if I look back at the Pep Guardiola era, someone's going to say, who was the most important player for Pep Guardiola? Just like they would with Sir Alex Ferguson's multiple eras. And I'm going to say Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I have to put him as number one.
Can I just say my 2 picks are treble winners though? I was just pointing it out. I'm just saying though, all these other players I got to the table were not treble winners.